Hey, I was on vacation over the past week and a half, and what happened while I was away? Well, several Black Lives Matter related shootings. So I know I'd have to come back here and address that as soon as I got back. And what do I really have to say that I wasn't already saying? I'm pretty sure this was inevitable because the narrative was quickly getting away from Hands Don't Shoot, which was based on a lie, anyways, and heading rapidly towards what we're seeing here. And the reason for that is entirely Black Lives Matter's fault. Let me explain. Black Lives Matter is operating virtually the same way as feminism and intersectional social justice. It's all the same thing. It's people who don't want to take responsibility for their own actions, who want to paint an us versus them, the fucking proletariat versus bourgeoisie or whatever. It's just a fucking tribalist bullshit thing. And they're both based on lies and protected against all evidence. They're cognitive bias based on bigotry, hatred. Okay, bigotry and hatred. Not phobia, hatred. Okay, actual racial hatred. So, you can go back on this channel. I'm not pro-police, and I never have been, and probably never will be. I don't like cops. I treat cops as a threat to my safety. And you have seen me talk a lot about police brutality and police brutality across racial lines and in racial ways. I did used to be a TYT subscriber, and I do hold very strong views about any sort of racism with authority. I don't believe in systemic racism because there is no systemic racism in this country. This is another way that BLM is like feminism, in that you take a word that means something and then you use it for something that does not fit that definition. Okay, there is no rape culture because we do not have a culture that supports, condones, or ignores rape. We don't. That's false. That's demonstrably false. That's not arguable. That's not subjective. That is false. Provably so. Falsified. Done. There is no rape culture. There is no systemic racism. You can show me, and I will acknowledge, evidence of a governmental authority figure, whether it's a person, whether it's an office, a precinct even, or a courthouse, and say, behold, this is racist, and give me evidence that it is. And I will say this person, officer, precinct, politician, this office right here is racist. Is this country systemically racist? No, it's not. That is provably false, because each little guy you show me and say this cop is racist is an exception to an overwhelming rule that doesn't support your narrative. Okay? And saying that does not undermine you. What it does is removes your ability to exaggerate and lie. Racism is bad, but in your fight against it, if you lie constantly, you do a disservice to your goal. Okay? Hands up, didn't happen. Okay? And for every Tamir Rice, we got some gangbanger who shot a cop and was shot in fucking return by another cop. Or, and then for every cop that executes a white or Hispanic, I've seen plenty of them, in a phenomenally stupid way, they're ignored. Because the media wants black blood. Because everyone's, this is a racial issue. And the media's like, this sells like hotcakes because the media's a fucking corporation, a consumerist corporation. What do they want? Black blood. When do they want it? As soon as possible. And so it's a fucking negative feedback cycle. Got it? Good. And like feminism, it's based on a lie, okay? And one they love trotting out, much kind of like numbers like the wage gap, we got percentages. 13.2% of the population of America is black. Roughly 6% or 6.4% or so is black male, okay? Of the people fatally shot by police, both unarmed and armed, 24% are black. 13 with 13 parentheses, 6.5. We go over here to something that's much, much more male, 24%, probably like 90 something percent male. There's a statistic missing, so 13.2 to 24%. Sounds disproportionate. That's our new favorite word, right? Well, I'll tell you what else is disproportionate. 13.2 versus 50%. Over 50% of all violent crime, rape, murder, mass murder, gang violence, just about everything but drug dealing, which is why you've heard whites sell more drugs, might sell more drugs. Why? Because that's about the only thing that whites beat blacks at in crime. And by the way, drug dealing isn't a violent crime. So rape, murder, gang banging, armed robbery, you name it. Blacks are represented at levels near to or well exceeding 50%. That is massively, stratospherically motherfucking disproportionate, isn't it? So you want to tell me why, when we have a country which has a major problem with criminal recidivism, going back to prison after being a felon or whatever, we got a demographic that disproportionately commits crime, and as criminals are very, very likely to do it again. So why do they get sentenced worse? Could it be because they're probably more likely to be repeat offenders? Why are they arrested very often? They commit way the fuck more crime. Why are they shot more? Well, why do you think they might be having more violent altercations with police? Could it be because the amount of reasons why somebody might have to have a police officer show up to a black person's location is way, 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 way more for that race than it is for mine? I'm not saying anything about why they did this or who did this, okay? Because, of course, when I say black criminal, I'm not saying all black people. I'm saying black violent criminal, okay? It's not a racial statement. It's a fact of demographics. And you can go back and say historical oppression, this, yada, yada, yada. But the fact also remains that we have a black president who was a Harvard Law graduate with no fucking criminal record. He didn't fucking do shit, okay? That is possible. It might be harder as a demographic. However, there are middle-class blacks and upper-middle-class blacks and rich blacks. And no laws that are different for them than they are for poor middle-class, upper-middle-class, or rich people of my color. So, to put everything in perspective, BLM is false. And it is a hate movement because it eschews any and all facts and reality to paint a narrative that you, the white cop, are killing us, the black everybody. And even to criticize Black Lives Matter is not to criticize the black race. Depending on where you're going for one of their protesters, especially if they're in very affluent areas, like one of the big protests that happened in San Francisco recently, you can watch a video of the crowd there, and I would say the ratio of whites to blacks in the protest crowd is 4-1. The cuck is real. I don't like that term very much, but it fits when used appropriately. When I think the appropriate use of the word cuck is when you show somebody who is self-loathing and self-harming or self-debasing on purpose because of a misappropriation or a misuse of guilt, feelings of guilt. Because this white person has a lot of money. They think that the reason why they have a lot of money is because whites got money from being evil, and therefore they don't deserve the money they have, regardless of how they got it, and should give it or give their time or whatever to somebody else. That sounds charitable, but until you look at the reason why. They're doing it because they hate themselves, because they think they are evil by fact of birth, by fact of their skin color, and need to harm themselves to help these strangers because they think these strangers deserve it. That's being a cuck. And the cuck is really real in BLM. So when I say Black Lives Matter, I'm not saying black people, because there's a lot of black people who think Black Lives Matter is the bullshit that it is. And there's a lot of white people who don't smell it. Okay? So that's not a racist statement either. It's not even a racial statement. Those are the facts anyways, everybody. Thanks for watching. And God help us, right?